in has gone up each year over the past 50 years, continues to rise. And there's less awareness of where food comes from. Kids especially think that food comes from the grocery store. It doesn't. It comes from farms and trees, and a lot of folks are not aware of that anymore. And what goes along with that is that we're not aware of how to prepare the food. Food is purchased ready to eat. So there's a lot less time spent in the kitchen, too. And decrease in exercise and movement, increase in stress, decrease in social support, and lack of time. We don't even have time to take the stairs when we go to the gym. We have to take the escalator to get there quicker, to get on the treadmill, and the Stairmaster. So 30% of calories that are consumed by Americans come from what I call anti-nutrients. And the reason they're anti-nutrients is partly because they don't have any nutrients. But the other reason is because they actually zap nutrients from you. They cause your body to use its own nutrients to help digest these non-foods. And so in the process, you lose the nutrients that you had going into the meal. And you can see the list, all the stuff that we love to eat. 1 in 3 people averages 45% of their caloric intake from these types of foods. And the interesting thing about this statistic is that if 30% of their calories are consumed with these foods, it means that 2/3 of their calories are what they rely on in their diet for all the nutrients that they need. And it's really difficult to do that, to squeeze everything that you need into 2/3 of your diet, not to mention that you're actively losing them while you're eating the foods. So what do we have to show for it? This was put out by the CDC. It's the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, and it's where health departments in each state quantify how many people in that state are considered obese. And they did that by getting a poll of what your BMI is. BMI is body mass index, and it's figured out by calculating your height and your weight. And I'll show you the data. They started looking in 1985, and every year they've gathered more data. Back in 1985, you can see that the light blue states had less than 10% of the population considered obese. And I should tell you, obese is considered about 30 pounds overweight for a 5'4" tall person, which would be about 174 pounds for a 5'4" person. That's considered obese. The darker medium blue had 10 to 14% of folks in those states were considered obese. That's 1987. I'm just going to scroll through these so that you can see the trend. Dark blue is 15 to 19%. Yellow is 20 to 24%. We're up to 1999. 2001. Now we're getting into 25 to 29% of that state is considered obese. Red is greater than 30% of the state is obese. That's 2005, 2007, 2010. And I actually have some statistics, if you give me a second here. I'm not using my notes at all, as you can tell. So we seriously have a problem of obesity. About 1/3, 33.8% of U.S. adults are obese. Approximately 1 in 4 children and adolescents aged 2 through 19 are obese. 48% of kids are considered overweight. I'm not sure where this statistic came from. I mean, I know where it came from, but I'm not sure how they figured this out. But there's one statistic here that says that about 15% of Americans are considered in vital health, meaning they feel phenomenal, they're not having to take prescription meds, they don't have any kind of chronic disease. 15%. And as we gain weight, all of the diseases go up. type 2 diabetes. Cholelithiasis is gallstones, gallbladder disease, hypertension, and coronary artery disease. So obesity is basically the best anti-aging factor that we have. So unhealthy diet is now linked to everything. But interesting, I found this statistic. People who have a BMI greater than 30, and that's those folks that have that are about 30 pounds overweight for a 5'4" person, have a 74% increased incidence of dementia. So, can we get help from the food industry? This is a poster that was out several years ago, and what it says in small print that you probably can't see, it says, "The obesity hype. Americans have been force-fed a steady diet of obesity myths by the food police, trial lawyers, and even our own government." So that poster was in Newsweek magazine, it was on billboards in New York City, and this poster was put out by the Center for Consumer Freedom, which sounds like somebody who knows what they're talking about. Really, that is a nonprofit coalition of restaurants and food companies. So they are not out to help you. All right, so some of the nutrition myths that I'm hopefully going to talk you out of. Low-fat diets help prevent and treat cardiovascular disease, cancer, and weight loss. Low cholesterol diets help with hyperlipidemia, which is high cholesterol. Cholesterol in foods has no impact on your cholesterol levels by blood. Bland diet for the treatment of ulcers. Seedless, nutless diet for diverticulosis. Low salt diets for hypertension. Atkins diet for good health. Dairy for bone health. Actually, our country has the highest dairy intake and the highest osteoporosis fracture rate. 4 food groups for well-rounded nutrition. Does anybody know where the 4 food groups came from? Yes, the food industry. It came out, it was actually an advertisement that was developed after World War II by the dairy industry and the Meat and Livestock Board. So there was no science behind the 4 food groups. And then the food guide pyramid. I don't know if you guys have seen the food guide pyramid, but it's very difficult. It's very confusing. It says choose fats wisely, choose carbs wisely. Okay, so, and supersize it. So the food industry, that's their message, is supersize it and buy more. Buy bigger, buy more. So it's no wonder we're confused. There's a lot of mixed messages. Food companies produce more than 5,000 calories per day per person of food in this country, and we eat it. And that's more than twice what we should be eating. These same companies spend about $36 billion a year on advertising because they have to sell the 5,000 calories per person. And of that advertising money, about a third of it is directed completely at children. So I like to pick on the food industry. We'll start here. Wholesome. So because they have a lot of calories to sell, they use some very slick labeling techniques. According to FDA rules, wholesome means fit for human consumption. The word natural on a product has no regulation, no meaning whatsoever. All natural refers to how a food was processed. It has nothing to do with how it was raised, fed, medicated, or sprayed. The Heart Smart, I think Smart Start, I think what they're trying to say is hold on to your heart because it's going to give out if you eat this food. Kellogg's Smart Start has, on the ingredient list, 12 different sugars listed and trans fats. And everybody in this room knows that trans fat causes heart disease. And on the Honey Nut Cheerios box, there's a logo, that big heart with the B next to it says helps lower cholesterol. So to qualify for the Heart Smart logo, according to the American Heart Association, who sounds like they should know what they're doing, a food has to be low in total fat, saturated fat, and cholesterol. And as I mentioned before, cholesterol really has no impact. Cholesterol in foods has no impact on cholesterol levels by blood. And so the American Heart Association's seal of approval appears on Honey Nut Cheerios, Cocoa Frosted Flakes, Fruity Marshmallow Krispies, and lots of other processed foods that are very high in sugar. So I think smart start should mean start eating eggs for breakfast. This one claims to lower cholesterol because it's Quaker oatmeal, and we all know that oatmeal lowers cholesterol. Oatmeal processed cereal does not lower cholesterol. To qualify for this Smart Heart Challenge, they did a study with participants, and what's not mentioned on the cover of the cereal box is that those participants also had to reduce dietary fat intake, they had to increase their whole grains, and they had to start regular exercise. But this gives you the impression that blueberry, Quaker oatmeal, Take Heart cereal flakes will lower your cholesterol and improve your heart. Pop-Tarts, this yummy warm toaster strudel right out of the oven, is promoted for its delicious juicy fruit filling. The strawberry filling contains about 1/7 of a strawberry in the entire box. The rest is artificial strawberry flavor. So here's a quiz. Which cereal is healthier? How many people think Kashi? How many people think Total? Okay, y'all lose. So, Kashi contains sugar, soy protein isolate, which I'm going to talk about, but it's bad, wheat sticks, sugar, grains, genetically modified corn, and more soy. Total contains sugar, wheat parts, sugar, trans fats, food dye, rocks that have been ground up for inorganic minerals so that they can say that there's minerals in it, and sprayed on synthetic vitamins. So really neither one is good. Those are my kids. Gets a little heavy, so I have to throw in some fun stuff. Okay, so how should we eat? That's the ultimate question. This poor woman. Food-free food. That's my favorite. That's what we're buying. So the number one thing that I try to convince patients of is to elevate the quality of your food. And what does that mean? Sorry, don't eat hair. That's not what it means. I have a hair in my mouth. So food should be real, it should be tasteful, it should be lovingly crafted, it should be organic, it should be homemade, it should be gourmet, locally produced, nutrient-dense, heirloom varieties ideally filled with true flavor, low in man-made toxins, fresh, grown and marketed with honesty and integrity, cooked with love. They've actually done studies on this. People that eat food that has been prepared in the kitchen by someone who is actively praying over the food or thinking about loving things about the people that they're about to serve, the antioxidant levels of the people that eat the food are higher than those who eat food prepared by somebody who's not praying over or thinking loving thoughts about the people. It's phenomenal. That gets into energy medicine. It's something we can't wrap our brains around, but it really does make a big difference. And I try to remember that as I'm standing chopping the onions and my kids are screaming and I'm just gotta eat. No, I don't do that. So elevate the quality of your food. I'm going to give you some examples. If you eat out a lot, eat in. Try making your own. If you eat frozen meals, try to make a couple from scratch. If you eat packaged snacks, Try to eat fruit or vegetables or nuts. Those are easy to carry. If you eat fruited yogurt, buy plain yogurt and add your own fruit. If you drink apple juice, change it to applesauce. If you eat applesauce, eat a real apple. If you eat potato chips, eat a baked potato. Or make your own chips out of a baked potato. Those are quite yummy. If you drink soda or juice, try sparkling water with lime or lemon. Or even you can throw a splash of juice into sparkling water to give you this sensation that you're drinking soda. If you eat packaged desserts, try making your own. If you eat lots of homemade sweets, switch to fruit or dark chocolate, my personal favorite food. If you eat lots of dark chocolate, get help for your hormonal imbalance. Okay, so every bite is an investment. It's either an investment or a debt, depending on what you're eating. The body is constantly in a state of renewal. So red blood cells turn over about every 3 months, meaning they die, we make new ones, about every 3 months. The white blood cell lives for 6 months, then it's time to make a new one. The muscle cells and organs live about 6 months, the bones and teeth about a year, meaning not your actual bone, your teeth fall out and you make new teeth, but the cells are turning over. And every year, about 97% of your body is completely replaced. And it's replaced based on what you're eating. You know, for so long I think we've put such emphasis on genes. And if we have good genes, then we can eat whatever we want because we got great genes. If we have bad genes, we might as well eat whatever we want because we're going to die young anyway. But what we're starting to figure out is that we can manipulate genes. We can turn genes on and off with how we eat. Environment plays an enormous role in whether genes get flipped on and off. No diverging. I'm not allowed to diverge. I have to stay on focus. Okay. Blood sugar stability, in my mind, is key to preventing degenerative disease. So when you eat a carbohydrate, and those who have seen me as patients know that I draw this on the table on the paper. When you have a carb, within about an hour, your blood sugar shoots up, and then you crash. And we all know that feeling. You get shaky. You're looking for a Snickers bar, and if you don't get one, you're going to go crazy. When we have a protein, and I should mention, at peak blood sugar, which is within about an hour, insulin levels rise, and insulin is what causes fat to form. Peak blood sugar is also when maximum inflammation occurs in the body. And inflammation is really the root cause of everything. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, ADD, depression, anxiety, everything stems from inflammation. That plays a role in every chronic disease. So at that peak blood sugar moment, all of that is getting worse. When we crash, our little teeny tiny adrenals that make all of our stress hormones release cortisol to rescue you from hypoglycemia. That actually saves your life. But over time, as we ride this roller coaster many times a day, your adrenals poop out, and that's not a good feeling. And you get fat, and you get diabetes and heart disease. Now, when we have a protein, blood sugar does rise. It's a slower rise over 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours, with less of a peak and less of a crash. When we have a fat, it's a very slow rise. I actually made this slide myself. And I couldn't get it so that the black line for fat actually should stay at the baseline beyond the 2-hour mark. So your blood sugar does not go up when you eat some peanuts. For a long time, that's why when you're hungry and you're shaky and you're hypoglycemic, you're not reaching for a peanut. You're reaching for a piece of bread or a cracker or a pretzel or something quick, hard candy, to get you back up. So fat, blood sugar rises over 3 hours, and then there's no crash. So ideally, what we should be doing is eating a carb, a protein, and a fat every 3 hours, so that blood sugar has a nice curve, and then we eat again. Unfortunately, we've been force-fed this idea that fat is bad and that carbs are good. that whole grains, we need to eat 10 to 15 servings of whole grains a day. And people translate that, because of the food industry, into whole grain cereals, whole grain pastas, whole grain crackers, they have whole grain everything now. I think they even have a whole grain Twinkie. So we're all on that roller coaster. And what I try to do with patients is I try to get them to eat more fat. It's very hard. And short of just shaking them by the shoulders and saying, it's going to be okay, go eat some butter. It takes a lot to get people to eat some fat and to pull back on their sweet carbs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through what are good carbs, what are bad carbs, what are good proteins and bad proteins, and what are good fats and bad fats. Okay. So carbs to avoid. Everything we love. We'll just sum it up, just like that. Anything made by General Mills, Nestle, Kraft, and Kellogg, you might as well just wipe them off the list. There's nobody here that works for them. I'm convinced that one day I'm going to open up my front door and get shot by the owner of Kellogg's. Okay, to pick on the food industry a little bit more. The Nutri-Grain bar used to be big. Is it still big? Are people still eating this? Have I given enough talks that nobody's buying the Nutri-Grain bar anymore? So then you can see, I put the ingredients up there. Corn syrup, sugar, partially hydrogenated, which is trans fat, soybean oil. Maltodextrin is a sugar. It's just a fancy name for it. Honey, dextrose, modified cornstarch. Does anybody know why they put so many different types of sugar in it? Yes. Because it's not the first ingredient. Because people know if sugar's the first ingredient, it must be bad. But they don't know that if you see 10 different words that mean sugar throughout the ingredient list, it's okay because it's not showing up until number 2. And enriched wheat flour, that's got to be good, right? So the Fiber One bar, are people buying these things? I probably shouldn't. Nobody's going to raise their hand at this point. Okay. Anyway, so the Fiber One bar has a lot of fiber. And people are told to eat a lot of fiber. But it also has a lot of really bad stuff. It's hard to see. Let me see. Sugar, high maltose corn syrup, sugar, canola oil, which we're going to talk about, that's also bad. Honey. Yeah, so it's bad. I put this slide up because I think the word organic, people know that we need to be eating organic, and we're lulled into thinking that if something is organic, it must be healthy. There is organic junk food, and it is still junk food. Junk food is really an oxymoron because there's junk and there's food, but there's really not junk food. So that is junk food, but it is organic junk food, which doesn't make it any better. Okay, so the milk filling in this delicious cereal and milk bar gives you the impression that each bar delivers a serving of milk. And really, the milk filling consists of sugar, non-fat milk, hydrogenated palm kernel oil, which is the heart-damaging trans fat. Every bar has 10 to 20 grams of sugar, which is about 5 teaspoons of sugar, and no fiber at all. But unfortunately, they're advertising to kids, and parents honestly think that it's like giving your kids a bowl of cereal. It's just quicker because they're running out the door to catch the bus, and they got to eat something. So good carbs, vegetables should be our main carb, vegetables, ideally frozen or fresh. Fruits, sprouted grain cereals or breads, meaning sprouted grain breads, not just bread. Traditionally made sourdough bread, and the way you can tell on a label that bread is traditionally sourdough is because it does not have yeast. And what that means is they've soaked the flour over the course of weeks, and it's made its own yeast, which has consumed the sugar of the grain. Whole grains, but be very careful because every single carb now says whole grain on the cover of the box. Whole grain in grain form means it's the actual grain. You actually have to chew it. It doesn't melt in your mouth. So that would be brown rice, quinoa, millet, amaranth. I mean, there are hundreds of different grains out there. Legumes and beans, and my favorite. If you do eat dark chocolate, try to get the kind that has the cacao content greater than 80%. The higher that number, the less sugar there is in it. And the better it is for you. Dark chocolate is actually extremely good for you. So good carbs will enhance athletic performance. Bad carbs decrease your muscle mass. Good carbs improve your muscle to fat ratio. Bad carbs cause fat. Good carbs allow you to eat more calories. Bad carbs cause your blood sugar to spike. So you gain weight with less calories. Good carbs promote normal, healthy growth hormone release, and bad carbs stunt growth hormone release. And this is especially important for kids because they don't grow as well when they're fed bad carbs because they're actually not making growth hormone as well. Just a quick word about canning. Can I eat canned vegetables, canned fruits? When you eat canned vegetables, you lose a lot of nutrients in the canning process. In fact, I'm diverging again. I'm not allowed to do this, but I really have to. So vitamins weren't discovered until canning began and until food started getting processed because they realized that people were getting sick. And what they were getting sick of was vitamin deficiencies, and that's how vitamins were discovered. When you mass produce flour to make Wonder Bread, or I don't even want to say Wonder Bread because people know Wonder Bread's bad. What's a bread that people are eating? You don't have to shout it out. Just imagine a whole wheat bread on the shelf. When you process the flour or the grain into a flour, and months later it shows up as bread on the shelf, you lose the majority of B vitamins in that process. And the grain itself, the wheat, has B vitamins in it naturally, and so when we eat wheat or when we eat quinoa, it's coming with the B vitamins. When we eat flour that's been milled months ago, that's gone rancid and the antioxidants are gone and the B vitamins are gone, our body can't digest that food without donating B vitamins. Does that make sense? So in the process, we get B vitamin deficient, and we're not getting B vitamins from the bread, so now we're doubly deficient. And low B vitamins causes, guess what? Sugar cravings. Because your body's saying, I need a grain here. I need some B vitamins. But we don't reach for quinoa, we reach for more bread. So you can tell it becomes this very vicious cycle. And I think, this is my own personal theory, but I think one of the reasons why obesity is such a problem and why overeating is such a problem is because the body is so desperate for nutrients that we're not getting from the food that we're eating. And so the body will keep telling you you're hungry until you get the nutrients that you need. And so then you just keep eating. B vitamin deficiencies also cause depression, anxiety, difficulty dealing with stress. And what is the stress calming food that we reach for? Carbs. Because we're wanting B vitamins. The one thing that I do support in terms of canning is canned beans. Canned beans are supposed to be soaked for a very long time before you eat them because they're difficult to digest. We all know that because we've all dealt with eating beans that haven't been properly soaked. It's an uncomfortable process for everybody in the room. So the canning process allows them to soak for a very long time, making them more digestible. So that is one area that I support canned foods. So this is a good carb. It's easy to make, very healthy. Doesn't have any glitzy ads on the TV. There are no coupons in the Sunday newspaper, but it is very good. This is another quick one. The Larabar, it's a raw food snack that is not baked, it's not processed, there's no preservatives. The only thing that's in it is what you see, which is typically dates and nuts. This is an even cheaper option, which is dates and nuts, or prunes and nuts, depending on how regular you want to be. Okay, so sweeteners are carbs, but I separated them out because I really want to go through the good sweeteners, the better sweeteners. So these are sweeteners to avoid: soda, juice, high fructose corn syrup, corn syrup. A lot of companies now are getting smart because they know that people are watching out for high fructose corn syrup, so now they put corn syrup and fructose in separately. All forms of sugar. Artificial sweeteners are an absolute no-no. In fact, if you have to have something sweet and you're using artificial sweeteners, the first thing I'll do is tell you to switch to sugar. Get off of Splenda. What's the other one? NutraSweet. Get off of NutraSweet. They're absolutely toxic, way more toxic than sugar is. Sweet candies and packaged snack foods and cookies. Back to the labeling nightmare. Oops, sorry. So, this is one of my personal favorites. Creamy taste of pumpkin pie, flavored with natural cinnamon and ginger. That's what the package says. Pumpkin pie in 15 minutes. What a deal. Apparently, pumpkin-style pie is code for pumpkin-less pie. So instead of that nice vegetable that's rich in beta-carotene and vitamin K and vitamin C, fiber, you get sugar, modified food starch, additives, artificial flavorings, caramel color, yellow dye number 5 and yellow dye number 6, because it's certainly not going to look pumpkin-y unless you add the yellow dye. And then the cinnamon and ginger are really the only thing close to natural in the product. It's like getting a diamond-style engagement ring. That's why they call them crafty. Okay. So I call this the cardiac edition of ice cream. They call it the limited edition. Skim milk, which itself is a processed food. Milk does not come out of a cow skim. They have to process it to make it skim. Therefore, it's not healthy. If you're drinking skim milk, drink 2%. If you're drinking 2%, drink whole. That's the less processed as you get up. Whole milk is what we were meant to drink if you're going to drink milk. That's a big caveat. A lot of people can't tolerate milk. The best type of milk to drink would be right out of the cow, which is unpasteurized. I'm going to go to jail for saying that because it's illegal here in Virginia, but it really is the way that we were supposed to drink milk. But skim milk, absolutely not. They actually, I'm diverging again. They add so many things to skim milk to make it taste like milk that they don't have to put on the label. Okay, skim milk, sugar, cream. That's the one real thing in the ice cream. Corn syrup, partially hydrogenated palm kernel oil, natural flavorings, because it's certainly not going to taste like ice cream unless you put that in. Wheat, flour, soybean oil, cellulose gum. I mean, you can't pronounce half the things on that label. Homemade ice cream, which is very inexpensive, very quick and easy. By the time you go to the store and come back, you would have already made it. 4 egg yolks, half a pint of milk, half a pint of cream, a tablespoon of vanilla, and a 1/4 cup of some type of sugar, unless you want to use stevia, which is a good sugar replacement. Stevia is an herb that is extremely sweet, so if you're going to try stevia, I would try it very slowly, little teeny bit at a time. Okay, so natural sweeteners. The reason these are on the good list, they still raise blood sugar, but they don't raise it as quickly, and they're in their original form, and so they have nutrients. So blackstrap molasses is actually very rich in iron. It's a great source of calcium, better source of calcium than pasteurized dairy. A great source of potassium and a great source of magnesium. I must have had a bad experience with blackstrap molasses because whenever I say it out loud or see it in the grocery store, I get this little nauseous feeling. But it's very good for you. Raw local honey is loaded with nutrients, and it's very effective against seasonal allergies. fresh fruit. So in baking, if you're going to bake after this talk, adding applesauce as a sweetener is quite effective, actually. Stevia, as we mentioned, and stevia comes in powder form, and it comes in liquid form. It also comes in liquid form that's got flavors in it. So there's orange stevia, vanilla cream stevia, chocolate stevia, hazelnut stevia, lemon stevia. Xylitol, erythritol, those are alcohol sugars, and a lot of folks get stomach upset. They get gas. That's the medical term for stomach upset. Unrefined maple syrup. Is that all I got? Oh, homemade baked goods, certainly better than packaged, and homemade ice cream. There's my favorite. And replacing juice and soda with water. This is another dessert that we eat in our house when we're craving sugar. And honestly, I don't even add the stevia. Dave, my husband, does because he likes sweets, which is a little secret because he takes people off of sugar. Don't tell him I told you. But he eats stevia instead of sugar, obviously. And so what you can do, some people will roll these in a pretty little ball and run them through some shredded coconut to make them look pretty. We don't want to waste that time. We just want to eat it. So we throw it all into a bowl, mash it together. We like to put it in the freezer for about 10 minutes because it hardens like a brownie. It is delicious. Do you need me to leave that up? Okay. I put one part because depending on how hungry you are, that part may be a teaspoon and the part may be a half a cup of each. Mm-hmm. That's a good question. A grade A and grade B are the good kinds. Apparently, if they don't have a grade, then they're refined, is what I know. Am I telling the truth? They are, and they do good maple syrup. I'm so glad you said that because I did, and you're not allowed to be asking questions in the middle, but I'm really glad you brought that up. So agave is the hot thing on the market now, and agave is loaded with fructose. It's touted because it doesn't raise blood sugar, but fructose is even more difficult for the body to handle than sugar is, glucose and sucrose. Fructose puts a lot of pressure on the liver and can cause fatty liver. And so agave is even worse than sugar. So no, I'm really glad you asked that, and I should add that to my slide. Thank you. Okay. So proteins to avoid. Unfermented soy protein, which is added to everything packaged, to increase the protein content, because most people look at that box that lists number of grams of carbs, number of grams of protein, number of grams of fat, and they know to look for something that's high in protein. Well, food companies figured that out very quickly. Soy is way overgrown in this country. That gets into the political side of things, which is a whole other lecture in and of itself. And so soy protein is added to a lot of foods, to carb foods. Soy protein increases estrogen levels. Men, you don't want your estrogen levels to go up. Most women really don't need extra estrogen. Even postmenopausally, they don't need extra estrogen. Soy protein decreases thyroid function, and we have a thyroid epidemic right now. Soy protein contains phytic acid, which specifically blocks mineral absorption. So it blocks calcium, it blocks iron, magnesium, zinc, copper. It increases the need for B12 and vitamin D, both of which are very important. Soy protein contains trypsin inhibitors, which interfere with protein digestion and cause stunted growth in children. And the high heat that's involved in processing soy protein leads to carcinogenic nitrosamines, which is what is in hot dogs and lunch meat, the nitrates that cause cancer. Most soy products also contain high levels of aluminum, which is a neurotoxin, can cause Alzheimer's. I could give an entire lecture on why soy is bad. TVP, textured vegetable protein, is also soy. And then animal protein that is non-organic, hormone-laden, antibiotic-laden, and nitrate-laden. One other thing about soy formula is given to babies, and because a lot of people have a dairy issue and babies are allergic to dairy, a lot of babies are. And they've measured estrogen levels in babies that are fed soy formula, and their estrogen levels are 22,000 times higher than babies that are fed non-soy formula. Babies who are given soy formula daily, it's been shown that that's receiving the estrogenic equivalent of 4 to 5 birth control pills per day. It's absolutely horrible. And then farmed fish. Ideally, we should be eating wild-caught fish. That's on the slide. Next one. But first, a brief advertisement. Okay, so Uno. This is eating pizza-style pizza, restaurant-style pizza in the comfort of your own living room. The serving size on the box says 5 ounces, which is good if you're under 8 or over 80. But anybody in between is going to eat more than 5 ounces of this. So if you eat half the pie, which is about normal for what people usually eat, that provides 1,030 calories, 20 grams of saturated fat, and 2150, that's almost 2,200 milligrams of sodium. So that's almost everything you need for your daily caloric intake, and it's way over what you need for sodium, all packed in your dinner. Okay, so good proteins. Wild game, venison, duck. Eggs, preferably outdoor organic chickens. This gets really tricky because there are buzzwords that are on egg cartons now, and so it's very confusing to buy eggs. At the grocery store, I think there are something like 80 different types of eggs that you can buy. Whether they're brown or white makes no difference. That just tells you the chicken. Different breeds of chickens breed different colored eggs. But ideally, you want to be able to ask the person that owns the chickens, are the chickens outdoors? And are they allowed to eat bugs and peck in the grass and eat and do what chickens do? That's what produces healthy eggs. When chickens are kept in a pen, close, tight quarters, they're pecking at each other, they're fed soy to fatten them, they're given estrogen to fatten them, they're fed grains to fatten them. That makes unhealthy eggs. This whole idea of cage-free means that this tight little quarter filled with thousands of chickens, there's a little tiny door way over there, and they've never been exposed to the outside, so they don't ever go through the door. But they have access to the outdoors. So there's a lot of, this is why it's so good, and I'm going to talk about this, it's so good to buy from the farmer, either from the farmers markets, from Sue's store, because she talks to the farmers, to really know where your food is coming from. There's a lot of deception out there. Wild-caught fish. Grains, whole grains in grain form, and beans. Quinoa is my favorite because it's not only a carb, it's also a complete protein. It's the only grain that gives you all amino acids, just like meat does. Nuts and seeds. Chia seeds are a wonderful protein. Hemp seeds are great nut and seed butters. Grass-finished organic meat. Grass-finished is important. Grass-fed means that at some point they were given grass. But the majority of their life was spent eating grain and soy and corn. Those are all things that cows are not meant to live on. So they get sick and they're given antibiotics. Grass-finished means all that they were ever given was grass. They've been outside on pasture the whole time. Grass-finished organic dairy, nitrate-free lunch meat, goat milk, and hemp protein. 50% of all antibiotics made in the United States are given to livestock. So it's very difficult to buy a quart of milk without getting some penicillin. And what else was I going to? The rest is too depressing. Skip that. So this is, if you absolutely have to have a frozen pizza, these are good ones. Amy's Pizza, and the American Flatbread was a restaurant in Ashburn that closed. I literally cried about this. They had their crusts, they would mill their own flour to make their own crusts, and for those of us who are gluten-free, you could bring your own gluten-free crust in and they would put the pizza on it. And they got their toppings from local farms. They got their cheeses from local farms. Most of it was organic. And they're gone now, but they do have frozen pizzas that can be bought in the grocery store. If you have to have a canned soup, Amy's soups are good. She doesn't add genetically modified stuff. She doesn't do preservatives and additives. Okay, on to fats. How are we doing with time? Ooh, I better pick it up. All right, so I've never gone to Tipton, Indiana, but if I do, I'm eating there. So anything hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, very bad. Margarine, bad. What's the other one that's really big now? It's the margarine replacement, but it's not butter. Oh. Smart Balance, bad. Cottonseed oil, Olestra. Woo, you want to talk about clearing a room? Actually, on the label for Olestra, one of the risks of eating Olestra is rectal leakage. If that doesn't turn people off. Okay, most commercial supermarket bought vegetable oils, because they're high heat processed, and when you high heat process an oil, it makes it rancid. And so you drain all of your antioxidants when you use the oil. And most fried foods, because they're high heating their oil. All right. So Orville Redenbacher does not only put popcorn in his popcorn, he puts partially hydrogenated soybean oil, salt. He does add butter. I'll give him credit for that. Natural and artificial flavors, color, and TBHQ is a preservative that causes cancer. That little sign says, I love pan-puffed popcorn. Pan-popped popcorn. So to make your own takes literally 2 minutes, and all it involves is popcorn, coconut oil, and sea salt, and it is delicious. Sometimes I'll put some nutritional yeast on top, and it makes it taste kind of cheesy. Nutritional yeast is brewer's yeast. Okay. So I can't have a talk without picking on Starbucks, the Fettuccino. So 61 grams of sugar is about 12 teaspoons. I call this swimsuit suicide. If you get a venti, it's 650 calories. If you add whipped cream, it's 780 calories, sipped through a straw. That's before you eat breakfast. Anybody want to guess how much a personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut, how many calories is in a personal pan pizza? 620 in the whole pizza. Okay. So good fats are essential. They help facilitate absorption of minerals. They help you absorb omega-3s. They help you get omega-3s into the cell wall. They help you absorb antioxidants. They get calcium into the bones. Fats are essential. They serve as your primary energy source for brain and heart. Those who are on low-fat diets have very much difficulty with what I'm doing right now. This is exactly what happens to them. I didn't eat fat this afternoon. They carry fat-soluble vitamins, so A, D, E, and K are the fat solubles. Very essential for lots of things, and if you don't eat fat, you're not getting fat-soluble vitamins and you're not absorbing them. They're the building blocks for all of your hormones, your testosterone, The production of testosterone is based on whether you eat fat. Same is true with thyroid, same with estrogen, same with progesterone, same with your stress hormones, especially those of us that do this all day. We need our stress hormones. Fat is what helps you make them. Fats line and protect every organ. Fats protect your liver. Saturated fat specifically protects your liver from damage from alcohol and Tylenol and any other toxins that are tough on the liver. Fats help you form pliable, permeable, complex, and intelligent cell walls. The cell wall is what decides what comes in and out. And if you have bad fats in your cell wall, then you don't make good decisions on what comes in and out. And fats increase satiety. One thing we do, we see a lot of kids with ADHD, and just getting them on good fats, getting them to eat real butter, getting them to take cod liver oil, which we're going to talk about in a second, can almost always, if not reverse their ADD, at least make it a lot better. It's remarkable to see. It's so easy. Okay, so good fats for cooking. Olive oil, I reserve olive oil actually for drizzling on salads. You really don't want to heat olive oil. If you heat it, keep it on low heat, because anything more than low heat will damage the olive oil. Sesame oil, coconut oil is great for cooking. Butter, lard only if you know the farmer and you know that the pig was not given hormones and antibiotics. Same true with the butter. If you don't know where it's coming from and if it's not organic, I would not do butter because the animal fat is where all the toxins in the animal are stored. Dressings, flaxseed, hazelnut, pistachio, hemp seed, macadamia nut, and then minimize canola, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower, and sunflower oils. Those are the polyunsaturated fats, and they go rancid very easily. And if you eat a lot of polyunsaturated fats, it means your blood will go rancid very easily. And so they drain our antioxidants. We need antioxidants when we eat canola oil to protect our bodies from oxidative stress. Avocados, real butter. Ghee is clarified butter. It has the protein completely removed. So for those who are very sensitive to casein, ghee is better. Nuts and seeds, coconut in any shape or form. This is my favorite fat. Coconut milk, coconut oil. Coconut butter is like peanut butter. You can eat it off the spoon. It's lovely. Shredded coconut, preferably the unsweetened kind. And then fatty fish. Yes. Real butter. I know. And it's so much more fun. So there's actually a study done on people who were eating broccoli. And they measured their antioxidant levels before and after the broccoli. And of course, when you eat broccoli, your antioxidant levels go up. Your vitamin C level goes up. When you put butter on the broccoli, your antioxidant levels go up significantly more than without butter. Butter helps you absorb antioxidants from the food. All right, so how do I get started? Shoot for 80%. None of us are perfect. I'm not telling you to never have a marshmallow again, but to shoot for 80% of the time, making good quality food choices. Make sure that you give yourself some grace. Include straying as part of the program. Browse the farmers markets. They're great. We're really blessed in Loudoun County to have tons and tons of farms that have good food. Local health food stores. This does require planning. It's not easy. When you're not eating packaged foods, you got to plan ahead. Always keep healthy snacks on hand. Use lots of good spices, fresh garlic, fresh ginger to add flavor. A lot of packaged foods will add extra salt and extra sugar, and so our taste buds literally have been fried. So when we go to eat real food, it's kind of bland. So when you spice it up, it tastes better, but also the spices have their own medicinal qualities. Regard food as pleasurable and nourishing, and take the time to enjoy it, which actually helps the whole digestion process too. How can I afford it? This is always the question. Buying in bulk is a good way. Health food stores will offer 10% if you buy in cases. The farmers offer discounts for meat in bulk. If you go in with 5 other families and buy a quarter of a cow, the meat is typically about $4 a pound, and you'll get steaks and stew meat and bones to make bone broth and ground beef, and it all comes in neat 1-pound packages, just like you would buy at the grocery store. But to get a steak for $4 a pound that's organic and grass-finished, and you know the farmer and you know that they're doing things right, if you walk into Whole Foods and buy an organic grass-finished steak, it's $20 a pound. So this is one way to cut costs. When you buy directly from the farmer or through the farmers markets, you're eliminating Giant and Safeway and Food Lion from taking a cut, so the price goes down. And buy non-edibles on Amazon. We get all of our paper products off Amazon. And make it a priority, investing now rather than later. Pay for good food now rather than paying for bypass surgery and medications and ADD meds, and I mean the list goes on. It's very expensive to be sick. So to sum up the nutrition portion, food can really be our greatest ally in preventing and treating illness. That's my son up in the right-hand corner with a banana. That's not my son with the watermelon. That was on the internet. I love that picture though. Okay, so moving on. Does anybody need to stretch? Everybody good? Okay. So lots of myths about vitamins and supplements. No need for supplements. We can get everything from our food. Centrum and Costco are just as good. One dosage fits all. If some is good, more is better. It's a really common one. All supplements are dangerous. No supplements are dangerous. One a day is good enough. And I need one of everything, because I just saw it on the internet and I need everything for every symptom. So people typically fall into 3 categories when it comes to vitamins and supplements. The first category is they refuse to take any because they're afraid of the risks. The second category is they take a Costco multi because it's cheap and on sale and they think they've got their bases covered. And then the third type of person takes a ton of stuff. Every time they hear that something works, they take it. And by the time they come in to see us, they literally have 2 trash bags full of supplements that they're taking daily. These are all myths, by the way. Oh, I hope I made that clear. Okay. So buying and taking supplements is very confusing. It's cumbersome. It's cost prohibitive. It's unregulated. It definitely should not replace good nutrition. More is not better. And it is a long-term investment. There was a study done at Yale New Haven Hospital where researchers evaluated 257 different vitamin products. And some were made with cheap nutrients or wrong nutrients, meaning what they had on their label was not what was in the pill. Some had improper ratios of nutrients, meaning they had way more calcium than magnesium. That's supposed to be in a specific ratio, the ratio that we get it from food, and in these supplements they were way off. And some were missing vitamins and minerals that were necessary. Only 49 out of the 257 were judged to be adequate. So you have to choose your supplements very carefully. The other illusion is that nutrients work like drugs. A lot of people think that if they start taking this supplement, it's going to work instantaneously, just like a prescription would work. And that's not how nutrients work. They gradually go into the body and are incorporated into our cellular processes and into our cells. And like I mentioned before, those take some time to turn over. And so you see improvement over a gradual, long-term process. It's not instantaneous, feel better the next day. If you do, it's probably got stuff in there that you shouldn't take. It's very rare that that happens with a good supplement. Okay. It is necessary to supplement because the quality of the American diet is poor, as I've just spent an hour talking about. The quality of soil is depleted. So even if you're growing your own food in your backyard, the soil is not as rich in minerals especially, but lots of things, that it used to be. We have more stress, and stress depletes nutrients, and we have more toxins, and toxins certainly deplete nutrients. There are tests that you can do to know what your nutrient levels are, and a lot of insurance companies will actually cover these tests. These are tests that we run in our office. It gives a lot of good information. Yeah, this is too depressing, too. Okay, so there was a government survey of 21,500 people, and it found that not one single person consumed 100% of the U.S. RDA. RDA is recommended dietary allowance, and for those who are not familiar, the RDA was set up, the levels were set up to prevent disease. So they're not set up as optimal levels of any nutrients. They are set up so that you don't get scurvy. So the RDAs are set pretty low. And 100% of people surveyed, and that's almost 22,000 people, were not getting 100% of the RDA. The time it takes for food to get from the farm to the grocery store to your table, most of the time in that process, if you're not buying local, you lose about 57% of the nutrients of that food, especially if it's coming from Chile. You know, we buy apples from Chile. The vitamin C content of that apple has dropped drastically after it's picked. So how do I choose a brand? Ideally, seek 100% food source nutrients, meaning food is packed into the pill. It doesn't have anything synthetically or man-made. It's very difficult to replicate what nature does, what God puts into a blueberry. We've tried, and it doesn't work. The other thing about getting your nutrients from food, getting supplements that are completely food-based, is that not only are you getting the nutrients itself, but you're also getting the synergists. So the way God makes a blueberry is he not only puts vitamin C in, but he puts other things in it that help you digest and absorb and utilize the vitamin C that would not be added to a vitamin C tablet that's made synthetically. And there's lots of data showing that synthetic vitamins are actually toxic. I'm going to run through a few of those very quickly. These are all the identified nutrients found in an apple. There's going to be a quiz on this at the end. This is what we've found in a Brussels sprout, and this just gives you an idea of there is a lot more to food than we know, and certainly a lot more than we can make in a lab. So in nature, vitamins and minerals are never isolated. They always are present in a complex form. So God's version of vitamin C is not just ascorbic acid, but like I said, there are lots of other things, some that we've discovered, most we haven't. Ascorbic acid really only accounts for about 5% of a vitamin C complex. But legally, the only thing that you can call vitamin C is ascorbic acid. Same with vitamin E. The only thing you can legally call vitamin E is alpha tocopherol. And separating out ascorbic acid from the vitamin C complex and calling it vitamin C is like taking the steering wheel out of a car and calling it an automobile. They're very similar. This is how man makes vitamin C. Starts with cornstarch, refined into sugar, hydrogenated into sorbitol, fermented into sorbose, lots of words I can't pronounce, bathed in ascorbic acid, alcohol bath, sorry, and you end up with a crude ascorbic acid. Scientists have chemically reproduced seawater and tried to put fish in it, and they die. We just can't do what God has done. We try and try and try, and it just doesn't work. This is the vitamin E that's found in foods. You can see alpha tocopherol is really just one portion. Every vitamin has a mineral that turns the key in the ignition. For vitamin C, it's copper. Copper turns on vitamin C. For vitamin E, it's selenium. And so when you take alpha tocopherol, your body sees alpha tocopherol and says, this is not what I can use in the cell. I need vitamin E from food. I need the whole complex. And so what it does is it will leach everything that's missing from what you see to form a complex with that alpha tocopherol that you're taking. And so over time, you get selenium deficient. In fact, when people are copper toxic, they're given high doses of ascorbic acid to pull out the copper, because that's exactly what vitamin C does. Okay, Reuters Health. There was a big study done on men who took 500 milligrams of ascorbic acid. Over 18 months, they had a 250% increase in atherosclerosis. These were healthy men, age 35. They did this study because they knew that if you gave them vitamin C, they would have less risk of cardiac disease. Because there are so many studies showing that when you eat food that's rich in vitamin C, you have less risk of heart disease. They were shocked to find this out. 250% increase, which is a huge increase. So synthetic vitamin C actually induces atherosclerosis. Ascorbic acid doesn't induce atherosclerosis, but a lack of bioflavonoids, which is part of that C complex, causes atherosclerosis. Does that make sense? Okay. This was out of the Department of Food Science. 100 grams is basically the same as a medium-sized apple. 100 grams of fresh apples have an antioxidant activity equivalent to 1,500 milligrams of vitamin C, and that those extracts actually inhibited the growth of colon and liver cancer cells. So what it showed was that natural antioxidants, meaning food sources of vitamin C, can help against cancer. Everybody's heard of this study. 136,000 people took vitamin E. This was alpha tocopherol. And what they found was that vitamin E increased death from all cause. New England Journal, a lot of people have heard of this one. They took 29,000 male smokers and gave them synthetic vitamin E and beta-carotene. And over 10 years, lots of things went bad. Higher rates of lung cancer, heart attacks, and 8% risk of overall death. And those that took synthetic vitamin E had more strokes. However, when smokers eat foods that are rich in beta-carotene and vitamin E, they have less cancer, less heart attacks, and less strokes. Beta-carotene, just as a side note, almost all the beta-carotene on the market is isolated synthetic compound made from acetylene gas. In nature, beta-carotene is only one part of a family of carotenoids. There's alpha-carotenoid, beta-carotenoid, there's omega-carotenoid. There's one called, let me look, make sure I pronounce it right, cantozanthine. And what they've figured out is that cantozanthine is actually a more powerful antioxidant than beta-carotene is. And so when you take beta-carotene that's synthetically made, your body is donating your own stores of cantozanthine. That's assuming you've eaten lots of foods that have cantozanthine in it. So I know I'm repeating myself, but I really want to hammer it home. This is very important. This was another study that was done. They looked at gamma tocopherol versus alpha tocopherol. There are so many studies showing that gamma tocopherol actually is more protective than alpha tocopherol in terms of cancer and cardiovascular disease. And when you take alpha, it displaces gamma. There's a study on prostate cancer, there's a study on lung cancer showing that gamma actually protects. Okay, antioxidant paradox. When you give people supplements, they have more DNA damage. If you give them fruits and vegetables, they have less free radical DNA damage. New England Journal of Medicine gave almost 23,000 pregnant women synthetic vitamin A, and lo and behold, there were 240% increase in birth defects in the babies. There are lots of studies showing that women that eat food containing up to 200,000 IUs of food, vitamin A, show no increase in birth defects. The B vitamins are another good example. The first B vitamin was discovered in 1925. By 1975, there were 10 discovered. And who knows how many B vitamins we'll discover by 2025. And we keep turning them into pills, thinking that we have it covered, and we'll never have it covered. A small note on potency. People think that number of milligrams equals potency. It does not. Milligrams only indicates the weight. And so the food-sourced supplements, if you look at the label on the back, the amount of vitamin C that's in a food-based multi is probably about 4 milligrams. And a lot of people call and say, I'm only taking 4 milligrams of vitamin C. I'm supposed to be taking 2,000 milligrams. Well, that's just the weight. And like I mentioned, in a C complex, there's so much more to it than the ascorbic acid. And so you don't need as much ascorbic acid when you have the whole complex. And it's equivalent to about 1,500 milligrams of vitamin C. That's a common misunderstanding. Okay, so what do I recommend for the general population? A good multivitamin mineral that's food-based. I'm going to give you a list of supplement companies that I trust. Everybody should take cod liver oil. Kids, adults, cats, dogs, guinea pigs, everybody in the house needs to take a cod liver oil supplement. It gives you lots of good things we're going to talk about. A lot of people need calcium, magnesium, but not everybody. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Vitamin D, vitamin C, probiotics. So basically, everybody should get the top two. The rest, I would say, the majority of population need, but it's on a case-by-case basis. And then beyond that, the other stuff like CoQ10 and vitamin E and all the other supplements out there really depends on the person. But I would not recommend everybody going out and getting it. Okay. This is just an overview of the essential fats. 3, 6, omega-9 is olive oil. We tend to get plenty of that in the diet, but 3s and 6s are more difficult. The 6s are found in, this is really hard to read, isn't it? Dairy and meat and vegetable oils. So a lot of people are getting omega-6s. The meats specifically that have omega-6s are those meats that are fed grains and corn and soy. Omega-3s are found in fish, primarily is what we know, nuts and seeds, algae and grass. And you can see that the omega-3s lead to anti-inflammatory molecules, anti-clotting factors, and anti-cell proliferation, which is what prevents cancer. The omega-6s do the opposite. They lead to inflammatory markers, blood clotting markers, and cell proliferation markers. Now, we do need both in the body. We need a healthy balance of both. But most Americans sway way towards omega-6s than omega-3s. So cod liver oil gives you omega-3s. And where we get omega-3s is in grass and algae. Most of us are not out eating grass and chewing on algae, but luckily animals will do that for us. So the reason fish has omega-3 in it is because it eats algae, and it transforms the algae into EPA and DHA. The cows eat the grass and transform it into EPA and DHA. A lot of people ask about flax oil as an omega-3 source. You have to convert vegetable sources, non-animal sources, have to be converted into the EPA and DHA. And a lot of adults, kids definitely can't, elderly definitely can't, but a lot of adults can't make that conversion. It requires a lot of nutrients that a lot of people are deficient in. And so, although flax oil will make your hair pretty, you're not going to be getting the EPA and DHA from it. So the best way to get it is from the animal sources, because the animals have already converted it for you. And that would be cod liver oil, grass-finished meat, and grass-finished fresh milk, meaning right from the cow. Okay, calcium. The reason a lot of people need calcium is because there are a lot of things that block calcium. Oxalic acid is one, spinach, rhubarb, chard, beet greens. A lot of people think that you can get calcium from greens, which is true, but there are several greens that have oxalic acid, and those are spinach, rhubarb, chard, and beet greens, and they bind up the calcium in the food, so it's not a good source of calcium. The greens that are a good source of calcium are kale, collards, Chinese mustard greens, and Chinese cabbage. Do you want me to say that again? Okay. Kale, collards, mustard greens, and Chinese cabbage. And that provides calcium that's very well absorbed. Phytic acid is found in grains and nuts and seeds and beans that have not been soaked properly. Phosphorus is found in pasteurized dairy, which is why dairy is not a good source of calcium. And then high sodium, protein, sugar, and caffeine all cause urinary loss of calcium. So people on high protein diets lose a lot of calcium unless they're eating tons of greens with their high protein. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm going ahead. So calcium absorption, this again gets back to food sources are better than non-food sources. The kind you'll find synthetically made, calcium citrate, calcium malate, calcium carbonate, tricalcium phosphate, that's listing how much of it you're actually absorbing. So if it says 500 milligrams of calcium in tricalcium phosphate, you're really only getting 25% of that 500 milligrams. You can see calcium absorption from pasteurized milk is 29%. But food complex calcium is 9 times more absorbable than the calcium salts. Selenium is the same way. Selenium in food has 17 times the antioxidant power that selenium salt does. That's a picture of hummus, my favorite calcium source. Goal should be 1,000 milligrams per day. That's total, including food sources. Not food supplement sources, but food sources as well. Most people get about 300 to 500 milligrams from food if they're eating somewhat decent. So it gives you an idea of taking 500 milligrams per day. Ideally, calcium should be combined with magnesium and vitamin D for better absorption. They're found naturally that way in food. And I told you the food sources. Canned salmon with the bones is a phenomenal source of calcium as well. Sesame seeds are another great source. That's why tahini, which is found in hummus, is very good. And molasses. Can't say that word without getting a little nauseous. Okay, magnesium is good for so many things, and I could give a lecture just on magnesium. Very good for cardiac health. It relaxes your blood vessels. It lowers blood pressure. It lowers cholesterol. It raises HDL. It decreases your coronary risk. It's just very good for cardiac health. For bone health, helps with osteoporosis, with bone density. It also helps with muscle tightness. People that get Charlie horses, almost always, that's a magnesium deficiency. Constipation, so it relaxes the smooth muscle of your digestive tract. Helps a lot with regularity. GI health, we talked about. Muscular health, we talked about. Sources. It's all about chocolate. Always comes back to chocolate. And then other stuff too, but chocolate really is the best one. As a side note, those who take diuretics, HCTZ, Lasix, those will drain your magnesium and potassium very quickly. And I would not take magnesium if you have any kind of kidney disease or any severe heart disease, because magnesium can worsen heart failure. Okay, next is vitamin D. Vitamin D acts more like a hormone and a vitamin rather than, or a hormone and an immune modulator rather than a vitamin. It's very important for the body. Helps absorption of calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus, and it prevents everything. I'm being facetious. It doesn't prevent everything, but it's really important. Food sources. Cod liver oil, and a teaspoon of the kind that I recommend, which is the fermented cod liver oil, will give you about 2,000 IUs per day of vitamin D. Herring is another great source. Outdoor eggs, chickens have to be outdoors, they convert the sunshine into vitamin D and vitamin A. Egg yolks are a phenomenal source of D and A, but they have to be outdoor chickens. 20 to 30 minutes a day of sunshine, preferably naked, as long as your next door neighbor doesn't mind. But if you're clothed,